I call this meeting to order, and as we participate this morning in a moment of silence, I would ask that we honor and remember Pope County Sheriff's Deputy Joshua Owen, who sadly lost his life on Saturday while serving his community. Deputy Owen is the 7th Minnesota law enforcement officer shot in the line of duty so far this year, and the 4th Minnesota law enforcement officer fatally shot in the line of duty in the last decade. Our thoughts and prayers are with Deputy Owen's wife and young son, as well as with his extended family and all of our brothers and sisters in Pope County, as the larger law enforcement community who mourn this tragic loss. Please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that, and quite a sober way to start our board meeting. But good morning to everyone, and thank you for being here on this April 18th, 2023 meeting of the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners. With that, I would be open to our next agenda item, which is to approve the regular meeting proposed agenda.
Madam Chair.
There have been no changes that I've heard of. Thank you, Craig.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
Motion made by Commissioner Felber,
And second?
seconded by Commissioner Halls. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Moving on to our second item on the agenda, that of open forum. Ms. Keisha.
Yes, we have 2 people signed up, Madam Chair.
Okay.
The first one is Ashley Worth Pefferell of Minneapolis, speaking on ICE contract.
Okay. Good morning. If you could state your name for the record.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Worth Petrick, and I'm the Advocacy Manager at the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Our local nonprofit organization pays immigration bonds for people who can't afford to, so that they can wait at home with their families and able to access full representation instead of being held in jail for the resolution of their immigration cases. In 2022 alone, we paid 145 immigration bonds because you can pay to be released and have the benefit of not being held. We totaled paying bonds in that year of $1,145,500. Right now, Sherburne County leaders are considering whether to renew their contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, which would allow the Sherburne County Jail to continue to incarcerate immigrants whose cases are working their way through the immigration system. Sherburne County's contract with ICE is about making money off of the broken immigration system. The county gets paid about $100 a day per immigrant detained in the jail, so the more immigrants Sherburne County detains, the more federal money the county receives. This is happening despite the fact that immigrants jailed in Sherburne County's jail aren't incarcerated as a punishment for a crime, but are simply there because the federal government plans to possibly deport them and they couldn't afford their bond. Once more, the conditions immigrants experience in the jail are abhorrent and inhumane. Immigrants are not allowed to have face-to-face contact with their families. Please imagine how long you could go without hugging your family members and children. They're not allowed to go outside, which means no fresh air, no sunshine, no exercise for months and possibly years. Also, solitary confinement is used to punish the most minor infractions or is used when people are suicidal. Immigrants are denied culturally sensitive resources and reliable access to translators. And the American Immigration Lawyers Association reports that attorneys are still not allowed into Sherburne County Jail to meet with their clients. Again, these conditions can be endured for years. Sherburne also does not provide the resources that other facilities have as an alternative to in-person attorney visits, such as digital visits using tablets and iPads, which makes it impossible for adequate and just representation. These specific injustices are also occurring against a broad backdrop in the nation in which we are witnessing an increased number of deaths in ICE detention, some of which are never reported, but many are linked to profound medical neglect. With the for-profit company that provided care to Sherburne County Jail recently going bankrupt, medical neglect in custody is an urgent local issue. Sherburne County should not try to profit from human suffering and a failed immigration policy that divides our community and harms our neighbors.
Ashley?
Yes?
Thank you for your testimony.
so much.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next,
Our next speaker is Julio Murphy Zelaya of St. Paul, also speaking on ICE contract.
good morning. If you could state your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. Thank you for your time. My name is Julio Murphy Zelaya. I am with the American Civil Liberties Union. I know the board will hear a presentation today about ICE, and to echo some of what past President Ash with Minnesota Freedom Fund said, we have some concerns about the contract. As you know, our organization exists about 100 years, focusing specifically on civil rights and civil liberties. Our concerns around immigration, specifically around this contract, are great. As we look at this ICSA contract, I want to urge you today to really scrutinize this contract with lower ICE rates in incarceration due to the COVID pandemic and also changing in politics. We know that a lot of numerous and empty beds are coming at taxpayer costs. So today, as a matter of good governance, we know we are wasting thousands of dollars that would be better spent on alternatives to detention and other county-wide priorities. As a matter of good governance and this historically low rates of detention around the country, we are also asking ICE offices across the country to eliminate these contracts. You can see more information, and I will share more information with the board with our letter to Secretary Mayorkas of Homeland Security. So in our experience in litigation and working with families on issues of due process and detaining immigrants, specifically around, especially here with detention conditions, we have insights to the factors and things that we want to bring to your attention, things that I think we'd want to see an end to this contract. So let's be clear that the government can take steps to improve conditions, but I think we will state also that this is simply, the detention of immigrants and non-citizens is simply cruel and unusual. Immigrant detention, as we heard, tears people away from their families, tears people away from their communities. It was not until the 1980s where actually people could fix their immigration cases while being in the community and not incarcerated. So there's alternatives to this. We again urge you, as a matter of good governance, to step away from this contract and look forward to partnering with you for any questions that you might have on as you tackle this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. Any other?
There is nobody else signed up, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. That concludes our open forum for this morning. Moving on to agenda item number 3, the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I would move the consent agenda as presented with the removal of item number 18, consider and approve a coffee service agreement with Blackbird Coffee Company.
Okay, Commissioner Danielowski moves the agenda, removing item number 18 to be moved to, we will deal with that immediately following the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Felber. Any other changes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Moving on now to agenda item that was pulled, number 318, Commissioner Danielowski.
I just wanted to pull this for separate consideration. My committee assignment, I do sit on the Board of Options, and I just wanted to be able to abstain from this vote. I do not get any monetary or anything off of that. I just, like I said, I do sit on the board, so.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Danielowski. So with that, Commissioner Danielowski will abstain from this. Do we have a motion to consider and approve a coffee service agreement with Blackbird Coffee Company?
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve that.
Commissioner Felber moves it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Gray. Any other discussion? It's my understanding that the coffee cart is here for a soft opening, or they're just getting set up, ready to train their people in, and so we will have a coffee cart, I think, the first part of May, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very exciting for us here at the Government Center.
Outstanding.
So any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
I'll abstain,
And,
one
we
abstention.
needed to do a roll call with that, or one abstention with Commissioner Danielowski. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, that of announcements. Administrator Bruce Messelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Just a few announcements for this morning. Starting with a couple of things this week for the community and reminder for the board. We Are Water is an active exhibit going on at the Sherburne History Center, put on by our Soil and Water Conservation District, celebrating water in the area and the community. A couple of events on April 20th at 6 p.m. will be the Lake Detective presentation. Really interesting presentation on some of the biodiversity issues and some of the pollutant issues that we deal with our water system here. And then on April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the Youth Water Festival. Would really encourage folks to check that out and see if there might be something worthwhile, as the weather looks like it's going to be cold, so it'd be great to bring a lot of youth to the Water Festival. Then starting this week and next week, you might start seeing some initial site work over in the western portion of the county as Xcel Energy starts early preparations for the Sherco Solar Project. Just note for the board, we are still in discussions with Xcel regarding our limited regulatory authority and what we can expect to be made aware of and be involved with. Also, just a highlight, if anybody is available, on the 28th, or excuse me, the 25th of this month is the Regional Economic Development Luncheon being sponsored by the Elk River Area Chamber of Commerce. And highlighting that is that we'll have 2 speakers. One you've heard quite a bit, Luke Grenier, coming to us from the Department of Employment and Economic Development, but our own Jessica Barthel will also be a lead presenter for that event. So if you're interested and want to join staff to be at that luncheon, let me know and we'll get you registered as registration closes here on the 19th. Starting in early May, Northland Reliability Project Phase 2 will be having a series of open houses. And then there's an online open house as well through the 1st through the 12th of May. So if you're interested in tracking that or want to share that with the community, I can get those specific dates to you as well. Then looking forward, on May 10th, we will be starting something called Welcoming Wednesdays for startups and small businesses. The Sherburne County EDA sponsored. It'll be a working with Launch Minnesota to host a series of events spotlighting startup and small business resources available within our community. The Welcoming Wednesday experts for May are going to be David Monroy from Monroy Law Office, David Heyer from the Regional Business Development Manager for DEED, Daniel Bullard, Business Finance Manager from the Initiative Foundation, and Andy Voller, who is Chief Operating Officer and Commercial Broker at American Heritage Bank. This is going to be here at the Government Center in the Maple Room, and everybody is invited to participate in this, and we're really excited to see this coming forward. Future events will include Wright County Economic Development Partnership at the Wright County Government Center on June 14th, and then the Benton County ED Partnership will be on July 12th. So a series of regional economic development events called Welcoming Wednesdays. Then moving forward on the 18th of May will be the first time that you'll see our community outreach van out in the community. It will be at the Cashwise in St. Cloud, and we'll be offering food and cash programs, assistance with eviction, disconnects, housing, childcare assistance, healthcare assistance, social service programs, including mental health, disability, aging, and parenting. And the van will be out every third Thursday of the month in different areas in the community of need. So there will be a flyer out, and we'll make sure that the board has availability to that. And then last but not least, just a reminder, as summer travel is starting to get filled up, if commissioners are planning on attending NACO and you haven't booked your flights or your rooms yet, if you would contact Keisha or me so we can verify that we get everything in place for you for July. And that's it for announcements.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can you send us that announcement update as you said it in email?
Sure, all of them?
A lot.
All of them? Sure, I could do that. I'll do that right after the board meeting.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions or announcements? Okay, moving on then to our regular agenda. Item number 5.1 is that of a proclamation that we are going to consider. We'll welcome Ms. Megan Carvo to the podium. Good morning, Meg.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to ask that my colleague Jody join me. We'll read the proclamation and then do a short presentation about our work in child abuse prevention. So I'll start with the proclamation. Whereas child abuse prevention is a community problem and finding solutions depends on involvement by people throughout the community. Whereas the effects of child abuse are felt by whole communities and need to be addressed by the entire community. Whereas effective child abuse prevention succeeds because of partnerships created between parents, practitioners, schools, faith communities, healthcare organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Whereas child abuse can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse. And whereas protective factors are conditions that reduce or eliminate risk and promote the social, emotional, and developmental well-being of children. And whereas Sherburne County has dedicated individuals and organizations who work daily to counter the problems of child abuse and to help parents obtain the assistance they need. And whereas all citizens need to be more aware of child abuse and its prevention within the community and be involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing society. Now, therefore, the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month and acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promoting the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe and stable and nurturing environment and help them thrive. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the Great Seal of Sherburne County to be affixed at the Sherburne County Government Center this day of 18th April 2023. I believe it gets signed.
Thank you. Okay, so presentation, you want to share a little bit more about
I
what this
believe
all means for
Keisha,
our
you
county?
have that. Yeah, I think Jody's out up there, Keisha.
So perhaps while we're waiting for that, if we want to take action on the proclamation and celebrating this proclamation and supporting this. So I'd be open to a motion to approve a proclamation of April as Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Danielowski. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Halls. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
There it is. Perfect.
I knew I should have brought my accordion. Next time.
Thank you for forgetting it.
Thanks, Keisha. All right, we'll talk briefly. Is this the magic pointer, I believe? All right, we'll talk briefly about child abuse prevention, maybe? There we go. In Sherburne County, and we'll keep this very brief and high level for you. I know you have a busy day. But we're going to talk very quickly about the child protection process, and that when we receive reports here, we do what's called an MDT, or multidisciplinary team process, where we screen cases 2 times a day. And at that process, we have corrections, public health nursing, supervisor, social worker, a case aide, and law enforcement present for those screenings. We either screen them in or screen them out. And if they are screened out, we often offer preventative services in the form of parent support outreach programming or referrals to community resources. If they're screened in, they either go to family investigations, which are mandated to go that way under certain cases, or to family assessments, which are more family engagement, and families are required to be active participants in those type of cases. Then they either open or close, and either of those, family investigation or family assessment, can open or close to case management, and both can go to court or be non-court. Our child protection assessment and investigation data shows that in 2022, our number of cases slightly decreased, which is good. And we know that access to basic necessities is fundamental to the well-being and financial success of families. We know that tangible resources strengthen families by avoiding and de-escalating crisis. It reduces parental stress, increases access to safe housing and reliable childcare, increases families' well-being, and strengthens families. Studies show that children from households with fewer resources are 3 times more likely to be substantiated for neglect than other children. Additional economic supports with COVID waivers have provided additional tangible support to families, but those are now ending or have already ended. The impact of these additional tangible support for families may be directly correlated to this decline that we're seeing in the assessments and investigation in the last 3 years, and so we're going to continue to monitor this data over the next little bit here to see if that changes now that those temporary COVID supports are going away. One of the pieces of data that we've recently been able to get from the state is data around alleged victims by city for 2020 and 2022. And so as you can see, cities have varying rates of reports of child abuse and neglect, which intuitively makes sense, as of course our cities vary by size. The most common report we receive is for physical abuse, followed by neglect due to substance abuse. And then you can see our 2021 data. And those are the months at the top. When we talk about how to prevent abuse and neglect, often you'll hear us talk about building protective factors. And these are 5 protective factors. We either talk about 5 or 6. The 6th one sort of comes in and comes out, and that is promoting a healthy attachment. So one of the ways we prevent child abuse and neglect is building protective factors. Protective factors are conditions or attributes in individuals, families, and communities that promote the health and well-being of children and families. By using a protective factors approach, child welfare professionals and others can help parents find resources and supports that emphasize their strengths, while also identifying areas where they need assistance, thereby reducing the chances of child abuse and neglect. They're research-based characteristics associated with a lower likelihood of negative outcomes or that reduce a risk factor's impact. In other words, they're research-based ways to decrease the risk of future abuse and neglect. So our parent support outreach program is that program when we screen cases out that often cases go to. In this program, the entire program is built on protective factors. So that research base that is about preventing future abuse and neglect. This program works to build those protective factors. It serves families with at least 1 child under the age of 10 with risk factors. The majority of families referred to this program comes from screened out child abuse and neglect reports. However, we can get referrals from other internal HHS programs. PSOP is voluntary. No one is mandated to work with PSOP. And the case stays open typically for 3 to 6 months in case management, or if it's assessment only, maybe they're having 1 or 2 contacts with the family, shoring up a couple of quick things and are done, and so they don't open it to formal case management. Or the family declines, and since it's voluntary, they're just closing it out. When we talk about protective factors, we can't leave out the fact that we do prevention in a lot of different ways and build protective factors in a lot of different ways in our agency. Our housing outreach services provides concrete supports in times of needs by ensuring the basic needs for housing are met. Our pointer case aids prevent individuals from falling off necessary economic support programs and will reach out to complete paperwork, obtain verifications, other things that are needed to help families get needed resources, such as help them get diagnostic assessments for adult mental health, children's mental health. They also help individuals make connections to necessary support services in the community. We have recently created a position called Early Childhood Children's Mental Health, which helps families with young children that are post-adoption, post-transfer of legal physical custody, get connected to children's mental health earlier, because we know these families have complex trauma and are likely to come back into our system needing higher levels of care. This helps build social and emotional competence in children, parental resilience, and parenting knowledge. Our family home visiting and public health provides pregnant women and young children parenting support. It builds parenting knowledge, child development, and promotes healthy births. Overall, our culture of providing integrated services helps families get connected to needed concrete supports based on their needs. Regardless of your role within HHS, we look at the holistic needs of individuals and families we are serving, and we make the necessary connections to services. Sherburne County HHS currently provides 6 outreach events each month in various locations throughout the county to remove barriers to needed services and to help make resource and service connections. So now that we've talked about protective factors, I'm going to hand it off to my coworker and colleague, Jody, to talk about family resource centers.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jody Hirungdick, and I'm the Health and Human Service Planner. Very excited to talk with you today about family resource centers. For some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing about it, and for some of you, this may be an update as to where we're at with this process. So what is a family resource center? It's a community or school-based welcoming hub where families can get support and services in the community. These are really family-centered, driven by families' needs, as well as unique community needs. So a family resource center in one community may have very different services than in a neighboring community as well. Services are provided at no or low cost for participants, and really want to create an opportunity for a peer support for families. So as families are coming into family resource centers, that over time they're meeting other parents, making connections, and building a support network that maybe didn't originally exist. Our desire here in Sherburne County is to build family resource centers in a variety of communities. This slide gives you an idea of what family resource centers may look like in different communities. They frequently say, if you've seen one family resource center, you've seen one family resource center. So that gives us a lot of freedom to create these, and they may look a variety of different ways. As we look at family resource centers in Sherburne County, one of the things for me that really clicked is we're not talking about building a building. Because at first I'm like, how are we going to create these in Sherburne County? It would be very expensive. But it isn't about building a building. It's about creating partnerships in a community, and through those partnerships, figuring out where a family resource center can live. Nationwide, there's more than 3,000 family resource centers. I would say in the state of Minnesota, the concept really came about 2 years ago, where there was some statewide activity in regards to building these in the state of Minnesota. Scott County is a county that Sherburne has looked at as kind of a model and mentor. They currently have 3 community resource centers in their community, so we've been working really closely with Scott County to figure out what that might look like for Sherburne County. So these could be large-scale nonprofit partnership organizations. They could also be a very small-scale partnership with a range of costs associated. Overarching goals are really to promote positive outcomes for children and families. So this highlights, again, some of the services and goals of family resource centers. So enhancing parenting skills, engaging males and fathers in communities, promoting economic success, increasing school readiness for youth, healthy childhood development, and overall prevention of child abuse and neglect. Again, going back to the slide that Meg talked about, really taking the 5 protective factors and helping that guide the practice of a family resource centers and the services that you might find there. So back to that parental resilience, social connections, concrete supports, and parenting and child development. Through family resource centers, there's lots of opportunities for partnerships. This just gives you kind of a glimpse of what those partnerships could look like. So bringing into a family resource centers things like job skills and training for parents, a food bank, fatherhood programs, health screenings, parenting education opportunities. This is a sample from Scott County. You could see at the top they have 3 specific locations. One is a library, one is the food shelf, and then the YMCA, where they originally had their family resource centers located. They have since moved away from the Shakopee Library and now do have a standalone building, which has just opened up this past month. So that's exciting that it's grown to the point where the community decided to invest in an actual building. And then this just gives you some of the ideas of various programs that might be brought into the Family Resource Center. So there's a legal clinic. They have people come in to be able to provide legal advice to members of the community, children's groups, parenting groups, the economic support program, eligibility and application support. That would be Health and Human Services sending economic support specialists out to be able to help answer questions, help families complete applications for any necessary programs that they may need. Again, this highlights Scott County's partnerships. I think this is always evolving, and if we get to the point in Sherburne County where we have family resource centers, partnerships that we have originally may look very different, 5 years down the road. So it's a very fluent process that can grow and develop as these become a reality. So it just gives you an idea of potential partnerships that we can create. So on a national level, this gives you an idea of some of the outcome measures for family resource centers and why we wanted to invest in family resource centers. So there's information to indicate that there's a $3.65 savings for the child welfare system for every dollar invested in the family resource center. So anytime we can prevent those deep end services, out-of-home placements, child abuse and neglect, that could be a significant cost savings for the child welfare system. Also significant reductions in child abuse cases by 63%, 50% reduction in out-of-home placement, 26% lower rates of community-level child abuse investigations. Gains from family resource centers really highlight economic security, self-sufficiency, and improvements in children's educational success and ready for education. So this is a outline of kind of our journey here in Sherburne County. So June of last year, we did an initial presentation before the county board to get the support to pursue and look into family resource centers. We did a presentation at the Elk River Rotary Club, which was very well received in the Elk River community. I think at the end of that presentation, they were like, how quickly can this happen? So we talked with them about our process for bringing these here to Sherburne. We've done a couple of site visits now to Scott County to really just kind of see their operations. What does this look like as we're considering various spaces across Sherburne County and what might work for us? This February, we submitted a grant to the Sauer Family Foundation. It was actually on the consent agenda today, so we received $50,000 from the Sauer Family Foundation to really begin the work here in doing a community assessment. We're just getting started with that as we just received the grant. You just approved it today, so thank you. To give you an idea of what that looks like, we really want to target certain communities. If you remember the slide that Meg showed where we're looking at the number of alleged victims in communities per child population, that is really telling us some of the communities where we maybe should be targeting to bring family resource centers. So within those communities, we really want to do some community engagement with professionals in the community, with families with lived experience, families in need of services, to talk with them about what is readily available in your community and what is not readily available in your community, as we talk about designing potential services. Also, because we think a location is a good spot, the community may not be receptive to a family resource center. So we really need to engage the community to get a feel for, do they think this is a good idea? And what do they see as benefits to doing this work? We have already a child protection multidisciplinary team that meets monthly. It's called our Safe Child Council. So we have talked about family resource centers there, and it very much fits with the mission of that group. So they have chosen to become the advisory board for our community assessment process. There's a variety of community partners already at the table, so we would like to start there to kind of get some input as to how do we roll out this community assessment process and engage the community in the planning process. Ideally, we would like to kind of be concluded with that community assessment process by fall. There will be another funding opportunity through the Sauer Family Foundation to apply in September for additional grant funding for really development of what that might look like. So if we have that community assessment completed prior to that grant application, that will inform that grant application as to what we really need for the next phase of the process. The one thing I did skip over is that in March of this year, Sherburne County began participating in a learning collaborative. The learning collaborative involves the National Family Support Network. They provide 2 consultants to Minnesota counties who are interested in developing family resource centers. So in addition to Sherburne County, Otter Tail County, Washington, St. Louis, Polk, Pine, and Scott counties are also part of that collaborative. We're all at varying stages. Scott County has been up and running now for a couple of years. Washington County, for example, just got funded by Sauer Family Foundation. They're pretty much where we're at, starting the community assessment process. Pine County has been fully funded for rollout. So we're learning. It's a collaborative to be able to learn from each other, what's working in their communities, what are their strategies and things like that. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about family resource centers or anything in the presentation.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, thank you for that great presentation. I know that I've always felt that if we start young, we can build that foundation of success for children and a successful future. I think you're going to find that there's a lot of silos, so to speak, that we have in Sherburne County, that if we can pull those together and fill in what gaps, because I know in my community we have a awesome early childhood family education service in the schools, food shelves, every community has those. And so I'm looking forward to watching this and knowing that we've already got some good foundations in our communities, the different entities that help youth, the way youth in Big Lake, and I know that there's an organization, Thumbs Up, in Elk River. And so I think that there is a great opportunity to start working together, pulling the silos together, so they're not operating separately, that we're all operating basically on the same page and helping as best we can fill gaps that are missing.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Others?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Hulse?
So this may be a dumb question, but the rest of the board is used to me asking dumb questions. So how would this relate to, for example, ECFE and community ed, for example, here in Elk River? Is there overlap there? Does it relate to this? Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, very connected for sure. I think one of the things is that we are very siloed, probably with early childhood programs. And so as we do this community work, we definitely need to be pulling in the school districts and that early childhood. They have great programming available. I think it's working with them to say, are there gaps in families accessing those programs? And can the Family Resource Center be a bridge? And or do the school districts want to provide some of that programming out of a Family Resource Center? So I'm not really sure what the outcomes might be for that, but there's definitely a correlation, and we need them to be part of the discussion to inform what that might look like in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it'll be important in the assessment stage of this to really go into what resources exist and look at perhaps initially a way to connect those existing resources.
Yes.
And then also look at potential gaps as well. But certainly let's look at the existing resources and how we can make those more cohesive across the county.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, because even if early childhood programs are not operating out of a Family Resource Center, they still exist. So how do we do that resource navigation with families coming in a better way?
Other questions or comments?
I had one more question, Madam Chair. Back on the slide that showed the numbers for the different communities,
Yeah.
I was just curious, you identified by city. I wasn't sure if that included township, or if a township numbers are separate, or how does that all,
Yeah,
and what does null mean?
that's a good question. I don't know if I know what null means.
So these are pulled by the state, and we have access to them. We can't really get more data about what the data means, unfortunately. So I would guess null is sort of a catch-all.
Okay, and then, so you're not sure then if those
Other-
would be township numbers included with the city numbers then?
Yeah,
Okay.
hard for us to know, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
So I appreciate the work on this. I've always, I'm a champion of this, and just I appreciate how our Health and Human Services Office in general is always looking at prevention, because that is the key, breaking down some of those system structures, cycles that are in our households with our families and our littles as much as we can to not perpetuate those cycles. So always supporting prevention. Wondering, and I think some of the research will show this as we move forward, but for instance, my area of the world, those Baldwin residents, most of them are connected to Princeton schools, so that goes into Mille Lacs County. Up in
Yes.
St. Cloud, we have Benton and Stearns County, and my guess is perhaps that area is going to be a good area for something like this. So how much are we partnering? You mentioned the counties that are on the, looking at this, and Stearns and Benton aren't part of that, and none of our surrounding county. I didn't hear them.
I think Sherburne's going to lead the way with our neighboring counties, but have reached out to the managers and directors in both Benton and Stearns to say, we know that St. Cloud is one of the areas we feel on the Sherburne side needs a Family Resource Center based on our data. So can we partner? Because people living in St. Cloud, doesn't matter if they're from Stearns, Benton, or Sherburne, they need the services. So can we partner and have a tri-county Family Resource Center? They're very much on board with that. They are not a part of the grant yet or have applied for the grant. That's okay. We have some other partners in the St. Cloud area, including Centricare, who are already thinking about this and have a potential plan. They're just not calling it a family resource center. So as we've been talking with them, we're both talking about the same thing. Can we partner together on this project? What I will say about Princeton is we do have a school social worker from the Princeton School District who will be on the advisory board. So I think those are potential future conversations. How do we capture that area?
Great. Any others?
Just from my standpoint, when I look at this, it's just that all the data that's here, and I live in the little Clear Lake hamlet, and that was a shock to me to see those numbers. So if anyone thinks they're immune to this situation, I think that's kind of a fallacy. I think this is a wide breadth through the whole county, and I think it's vitally important.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we already accepted the proclamation, so
Yes.
thank you for your work in this. Moving on to agenda item number 5.2, Mr. Dan Weber with a Wright County contract.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Over the past decade, the county has been a member of CMRP, and before that, the Highway 25 Coalition, which consists of several local partners working to develop a long-term vision for transportation improvements and connections to the I-94 and Highway 10 corridor. The request today is to enter into an agreement with Wright County to initiate a planning and environmental linkage study, probably better known as PEL. The main objective of the PEL study is to address the purpose and needs while also beginning the federal NEPA process that assesses the environmental impacts of the proposed project. The counties jointly interviewed 3 firms and Bolton and Mink was selected as the most qualified firm for the project. The total cost is approximately $900,000. We do have a balance in CMRP that would pay about half of that. We also received a grant from the Initiative Foundation, so the remaining balance would be about $207,000 each for Sherburne and Wright counties. This was a budgeted expense in the Public Works budget, so it would not be an additional cost that hasn't already been budgeted. The study would take about 18 to 24 months to complete. And to summarize, staff is recommending approval to partner with Wright County and contract with Bolton Mink to complete the PEL study. And I know Commissioner Danielowski and Commissioner Felber are on the CMRP committee, so I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I just wanted to add that this is something that has to be done before you can continue to discuss a potential river crossings. And without it, you'll get nowhere. And we're ready now. We've come so far that this is the next step. And both Wright County and Sherburne County feel that it's important to continue this process. And I just can't speak enough in support of we need to do this. It's required by federal and required by state agencies to move on.
Madam Chair? Just a quick question. Is there a limit geography-wise on where this study is going to take place, or is it anywhere from?
It is
Elk River
from
up to
Becker all the way through Big Lake right now, and then it goes into Monticello on the Wright County side.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the Sherburne County's participation and support for a Wright County contract with Bolton and Mink to study improvements to Trunk Highway 10 and I-94 connectivity, subject to final county approval and review and approval of said contracts as to form.
I'll second that.
Motion and second has been made. Any other questions or comments? I won't make my soapbox. I won't share my thoughts. I really, really hope that we're looking beyond just that when I know that's our area, but I was just in a meeting with Anoka talking transportation last week, 2 weeks ago, and they are also looking for connectivity. And I was in a conversation with St. Cloud, and they are also.
Correct.
And in my little world, I don't think we're ever going to get 3 bridges in my lifetime. So hoping that we're looking at this beyond our own area to see what makes sense, and that I would, in an ideal world, we'd all get together on this and figure out which is needed the most during this space and time in life. So,
And that being said, Madam Chair, I understand what you're saying, but when you look at the big picture and the distance between bridges, we are kind of strategically placed to alleviate that. What's coming at us in the growth and the population numbers, I think we have to move forward.
and I
That's just
believe
my
if we'd get our partners on support with that, then it would be a lot more appealing project for those that need to fund these things, so, in my experience. So, Administrator Messelt.
You know, that does raise an interesting thought, which is with this consultant to at least ask whether or not they're going to look at what I'll call regional impacts. If a bridge is built here, does it impact the demand up to St. Cloud, and does it impact the demand down to down to, you know, Foley and Anoka? Just having that information would be super helpful in those conversations. So, you know, and then the other challenge would be we're in two different APOs. So whatever the study is, to present it to both APOs and make sure that they're aware of it. So it's a good comment.
And that is in there as well. That is their job, to be looking at those as well. So, like I said, it can't move forward without the PELS study, and this is just that step. And we have had MnDOT and the federal at our table all the time. So they know and they understand as well the need for this. And I can only imagine that they see the need here, so.
Madam Chair, I mean, and if we are at all to have a reasonable chance of revitalizing the Becker area in the future, for industrial development, you need better transportation in there. And without a bridge over the river nearby, that's going to be very difficult to achieve. So, yeah, it's a lot of money, but these are really expensive studies, and they really got to look at a lot of things. Whenever you're building across water, all the environmental and cultural aspects are incredibly expensive to research.
And Madam Chair, it also comes into play with Opportunity Drive, areas like Commissioner Felber mentioned with Becker and along with Monticello in Wright County. And like I said, Opportunity Drive and the plans that are for huge expansions in a lot of freight movement. This would all fit in that area as well.
I'm all in. I believe you need to expand your region. I'm all in. So with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Item number 5.3, Ms. Diane Arnold. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chairman. Before you is my monthly report for the month of March. I kind of outlined in my outline letter and stuff on here. What was enclosed in here was our March trial balance and our investment reports. As you can see, our investments are over budget currently, and which is good. That's good news for us. This, in our general fund, the balance does include our Recorder's Compliance Fund, which is we keep track of that is part of that fund balance in there, and that's currently at $343,669. Then there's also a one page after the investments and where things are located and into which investment fields. We do have a one-page budget to actual report, and this is by function, so it comes out on one page. This is a modified accrual report, so this changes with our actual cash, which is being dispersed and our revenues coming in. This also will entail our modified accrual accounting entries that we're doing for our journal entries for our 2022 audit. So if there's any revenue or whatever that came in 2023 that was supposed to be for 2022, we do the accruing entries and stuff on that, so.
And that's page 6 in the
Correct,
report.
that is page
correct?
6, yep, of 18. Does anyone have any questions prior to that before we move on to the page 7? I know there's a lot of numbers and not a lot of pretty graphs and stuff for you, but we are the numbers department, so.
Okay, I don't see any questions,
Okay,
so.
thank you. So continuing on to page 7, on here are the township election results. That was from March 14th, as reported by the township clerks. And as you can see, we just have, there's 3 townships that have their March elections, and the rest of these listed on here, or excuse me, there's 3 that have just a November election, and the rest of the townships listed on here have March elections. And we just listed everyone that was on a candidate in that township and running for a supervisor's position there. So that's just for your information. That also, report is also posted on my bulletin board outside of my office for anyone that, would want to preview it. Next, on page 8, we move into our 2023 actual tax rates. And the actual tax rates are by the taxing authority within Baldwin, each one of the townships, the cities, the school districts, special taxing districts. And then I've also included the rates for 2022, so you can see the differences on there. Then moving into the following page, we've got, on page 10 there, we've got our actual tax capacity values. So you can see the differences throughout the years where our taxable market value, where the increase is, if there's an increase or decrease, our net tax capacity, and the percentages of each on those. And then again, that was the 2023, and I provided the 2022 for you as well. It's a lot of numbers, but I feel like they're interesting on here. I did also on page 12 and 13 is a report in here that shows more of a snapshot from 2018 to 2023, the tax rates by taxing authority. And we have a lot of our townships and cities and stuff that request this report. So I felt like it's informational and good information for our board to have as well. The following page, on page 14, we're getting into a little bit more statistics. And here we entered in what our population and stuff was for the years, our county budget, and our lesser income on there, the lesser program aids, what our net levy is, our taxable market value, our net tax capacity, and then the county tax rate, and then the effective tax rate. And as you can see, our effective tax rate has been going down. We are now down to 0.43%. So I just gave an explanation of everything that's on that report. Moving on to page 15, this is a report that's comparing, this is like taking the taxable market value and doing your 2022 to 2023, and you can see your differences in the different categories that being taxed. And on here we are showing in each one of the categories represented, we're showing increases except for in our mineral and our mineral rates. There, or the mineral tax went down to 0 that came out on our report. So we have a total increase of over $2,549,643,000, 285. So that was our increase in our taxable market value. Moving on to page 16 and 17 of the report, these are really small, but we have started back in 1996 providing, there's 4 parcels that are listed on here. These are the 4 parcels that have the machinery and building values and stuff for Xcel Energy. And this is for the utility portion of it. And it just gives you, from the last page on page 17, actually is where you can kind of see how the net tax capacity and what percent of Xcel is the county's total, of the county's total is that percent. And that's been going down each year. As we know, that's going to be phasing out even more. And I don't know if this report is actually interesting to you. I do it every year, just it keeps going. I enjoy doing it, but I just didn't know if this is interesting to you at all as a board. you know, to have this information. I can certainly continue doing it until we kind of, things phase out, and then we kind of can see where things are at. This also shows, you know, the portion that's the county taxes, the city tax, and the school tax on there. And then also what the state is retaining on for taxes. So it's a lot of information on a little space, but does anyone have any questions?
Any questions or comments?
It's a lot of numbers in this report, so.
Appreciate that.
One question, is it possible with the shutting down of Sherco 2 at the end of this year, can you show the difference of what that'll make on the taxes at the end of it?
Well, if it's shutting down this year, well, there's still gonna be assessed values on there, so that's gonna take a little bit more for it to be reduced, but that's, Dan, do you have any more information on that as far as for the state? Thanks.
Unit 2 and Unit 1 have less value than Unit 3, so I'm anticipating between 1.5% and 2% of our tax capacity would be lost when Unit 2 shuts down.
Okay.
Another 1.5% to 2% when Unit 1 shuts down, and the majority of value is in that Unit 3. They also lease a portion of that to Southern Municipal Utilities.
Yep.
So really the big hit to the county will be when Unit 3 shuts down.
Okay.
The other thing is you probably won't see in the aggregate number, you won't see a negative because other growth will probably compensate for that total amount.
Right.
But you'll see the growth slow for those couple of years. But that's just, you know, assuming other growth, right?
There is a transition aid bill at the legislature right now, which we would qualify for if it is approved, so that could have a factor in how much tax capacity we lose as well.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair, and Dan, could you reiterate, the property is still there?
Yeah, the land would still be taxed. There's some substations, there's a transmission line, so some of that infrastructure would remain.
Yep. As taxable.
It's about 8% of the infrastructure would remain, of the existing value would remain when everything is shut down.
Thank you.
Now, they are building additional transmission lines would offset that as well.
Okay, other questions or comments? And our newly formed Energy Committee hopefully will keep us posted in more depth on those things as we
Okay,
move
that's
ahead,
great.
so. Okay, thanks for that report. This is an action item, so I would be open to a motion to accept and approve the Auditor Treasurer's monthly report for March 2023.
So move.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Gray. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Seconded by Commissioner Danielowski. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thanks,
Thank you,
Diane.
Madam Chair.
Moving on to agenda item, we're going to stay in order. So I've been getting a few notes here and there, waiting for slide decks, all the tap dancing that goes on behind the scenes. We are going to go on to item 5.4 with Ms. Amanda Larson with the Health and Human Services Annual Report.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Sorry about that. I had to get the annual reports that were sitting on my desk, so thank you. Appreciate you allowing us to take some time to present to you our 2022 Health and Human Services Annual Report. I don't have slides, but I do have this annual report that's being passed around, and I'd be happy to leave some at the desk for anybody in the audience that wants to view it as well. 2022 is probably the first year since COVID where it didn't feel like we were living in a COVID world, but really immersed in the after effects of how COVID affected society. In many respects, it was a giant game of whack-a-mole, and it still is. Complexity and acuity are at all-time highs, and Health and Human Services staff saw growth in many areas. But really what took a toll on our workers is not unique to us, but really it's the enormity of the issues that are facing our clients and our families, as well as compounded with staff shortages, both within HHS and just kind of normal turnover for the employment world, but also staffing shortages in community providers, really leaving the county as the de facto safety net for a lot of our residents. As you know, case management or referrals is really core to what we do, but really when there's no community providers and there's no infrastructure to refer folks out, then really it's our county workers that are left to help families navigate the complexity of their own situations. Saying that, we do make lemonade out of lemons, as Health and Human Services does, and so we continue to pivot, creatively work to meet community needs while also trying to save county tax dollars and do better by by our clients at every opportunity. So just a few 2022 highlights. As you've heard, Health and Human Services really expanded our outreach efforts. The work is already in the community, and so really how can we lessen the burden and lessen deep-end services by going out to serve clients? Securing non-levy dollars to do dental, housing, and provide residents flex funds. Those flex funds help to avoid disruption in services, help with car repairs for folks to get out to work and go to childcare, moving repairs, and also helping reduce evictions. Targeted our work around prevention as a method to curb disrupted adoptions and out-of-home placements, and you'll hear more about that today. And then also worked on our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to really continue to serve our entire community. So with that, each of our division managers will come up and speak very briefly to the areas that they represent in our annual report, but I do supervise our administrative division, which is our clerical and accounting. And so just real quickly, you'll see right at the front page, and this is going to go in order to the annual report, you'll see that on one of our slides that we've increased our agency collection, doubling what it was 5 years ago. This money does come back to the agency, so you'll notice some parental fees for our placements, but also really increase in terms of our medical assistance recoveries. Medical assistance recoveries, 25% goes to us, 75% goes to the state. There has been a recent legislative change, so those parental fees to our agency, those actually, the assessment for foster care and treatment, we are no longer collecting, so that will impact our budget this next year to the tune of about $100,000. Clerical, they continue to support our staff, chronically short-staffed. It's an entry-level position, so they're always getting promoted into other positions within the agency. But in 2022, we did serve 3,900 walk-in clients to the agency, and over half of our clerical folks' time was spent scanning and electronic filing all the documents coming into the agency. The next area I'll actually speak to is for Gina, who is our economic supports manager. Unfortunately, she was out sick today, and so I'll be doing my best at speaking to her area. The economic supports division encompasses our child support, our family financial assistance, our healthcare assistance, and our adult and supportive housing. So first I'll speak to child support. We always measure our performance measures, state and federally. Child support unfortunately fell short in 2 out of 4 categories, yet we're still above statewide performance. Actually, we really measure those child support collection paid. We want to be above 80% because that's when we get federal performance dollars, and we have yet to miss one of those federal performance dollars. However, the state fell below that 80%, and then we as Sherburne County also fell below 80%. So we're keeping a close eye to see if that impacts money coming into the agency. Healthcare is probably our largest focus area right now. It was in 2022, and it certainly is in 2023. You remember that the public health emergency that's been going on for 3 years with COVID is now coming to an end in May. And so during one of the waivers in the public health emergency was that nobody fell off healthcare. And so renewals just continued automatically, regardless of any household change. So whether somebody's income increased, decreased, got married, got divorced, had a new baby, changed jobs. Think of all those changes in 3 years, people just remained on autopilot on healthcare. And so now that is ending. Notices have already started to go out. And so during those 3 years, our caseload increased from 13,000 residents to 21,000 residents, so nearly doubling. And so now over the next 12 months, we'll have the monumental task of manually checking eligibility and re-enrolling each one of those individuals to see if they're still eligible for health care. It's estimated about 12% have had no changes and will auto-renew, whereas the rest will be a manual task for our county workers. This is also not how we did eligibility pre-COVID, rather it's a whole new process. The state had a electronic automatic self-service system that they had been in development. Unfortunately, that was riddled with bugs, and so it has now been pushed off until September next year. So really the burden is going to fall on county workers to do manual reentry of each one of those. If folks fall off healthcare, obviously that impacts them for doctor's appointments and prescriptions and everything else under the sun, but it also has a very real impact on county levy dollars because people also fall off waivers. They also fall off when there's a healthcare or the hospitalization. And so again, the county is the de facto safety net. And so really, thanks to the board, we do have 3 limited short-term ARPA-funded positions, helping with that. So one has been on board for 2 years, again, helping with the increase of those healthcare cases, and then the other two have been hired probably 6 months ago, so they're just kind of in the middle of the training. And so we are not going to be able to keep up with the influx. None of the 87 counties is, but at the same time, I really think Sherburne is in the best possible position, and we've been very lucky because Gina has been on the forefront of those statewide efforts in terms of this renewal and unwinding, so. For our other financial assistance programs, SNAP, our food support program, has increased by 22%. eSNAP benefits did end early 2023, which was really a steady source of income for families over the course of 2 years, sometimes to the tune of $500 a month. So families are now learning to deal without that additional income. Child care cases went back to the 2018-2019 levels. Sherburne was only one of 8 or 9 counties to expend our basic sliding childcare fee assistance. So that's good news because that means people need childcare because they're going back to work. And then our centralized income maintenance calling bank. We have repurposed case aids, which are a lower level, so eligibility specialists can really be focused on processing eligibility. And so those case aids took an average of 2,145 calls per month. This actually represents a decrease from the year before. However, the emails that they're responding to is a 42% increase, so about 1,100 emails per month. So right now you will probably find, if you hear from your constituents, that folks have very long wait times being on hold to get a hold of one of our healthcare specialists, about 20 to 30 minutes. That's just projected to get worse, but we really are trying to do as much outreach, especially for folks that are connected with a social worker, and then get as much information out to reduce the folks calling into the agency. And so with that, I will turn it over to Nicole, who will talk about our public health programs.
Any questions or comments about the Economic Supports Division or Gina's area?
Madam Chair, do we have any idea why the collection of child support went down this last year?
COVID. I think you can blame everything on COVID. This was not unique to Sherburne. This was not unique to Minnesota. Really, federal child support collections went down, and really theoretically probably because people were out of work and so unable to pay their child support, asking for modifications to their child support. And so we see those trends upward. We actually have a vacancy in our child support division right now that we're holding on to until we see those levels back up, but we're hopeful. We've historically had very good luck with child support collections, so we're hopeful we'll get above that 80% this next year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Just a quick highlight for our Public Health Division, but first I will say, the pillars of public health are prevent, promote, and protect. And I think I lost count of the number of times I heard the word prevention or prevent this morning, so it just really solidifies a commitment here in Sherburne County, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. So on with some updates. We, again, have continued to navigate post-COVID. We've done some restructuring within public health where resources were needed more and maybe they were needed less, but really working on a collaborative approach within our division, within Health and Human Services, and with our community partners. For our WIC participation, we've seen that grow over the last 5 years. We do anticipate maybe some changes come August when we do require folks to come back for in-person visits, but time will tell. But we're certainly hoping to meet clients where they're at and how we can be really deliberate about making appointments easy and scheduling. We also were able to start peer breastfeeding and a farmers market nutritional program through 2 grants through the state of Minnesota, so providing some additional support to our WIC recipients. And as the cost of food has risen, we've seen over $1.2 million invested back at our local grocery stores through our WIC program. I've talked about this in the past, but we also saw a large influx of refugees from Afghan and Ukrainian populations. That too made us do some pivoting to address those needs. So our refugee population does have some health requirements through the Public Health Agency, as well as just general disease prevention and control. And so we needed to move some of our nursing staff to help with that influx. And then lastly but not least, our home visiting. We did start a new model back in 2021, and at the end of 2021, we had 13 families enrolled in that model. As of the end of 22, we had 45 families. So we really saw a lot of growth in that evidence-based model, which really helped set us up for some expected outcomes and improvement with those families that we're working with. I think that's all I have for updates. You hear quite regularly from me, so any questions?
Thanks, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole with regard to public health? Prevent, promote, and protect.
Thank you.
I'll be a walking banner. Okay, Mr. Tony Masters.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. My name is Tony Masters. I am the manager of the Adult and Disability Services Division in Health and Human Services. A lot of what you're going to see in the 2022 annual report is related to growth in my service areas. So starting with MnChoices. MnChoices is an assessment process to determine eligibility for the waiver program's personal care assistance consumer support grant. Over the last 3 years, we've seen a 21% increase in the growth within that program area for a total of 1,778 assessments that were completed in 2022. Wait times had increased up to 5 to 6 weeks in 2022. We were able to reassign a public health nurse when a position was open. That position was reassigned to MnChoices to try to address the wait times that we're seeing. I'm happy to say when I checked in this morning, we're at about 4 weeks right now, so I've seen an improvement on there. Ideally, we'd like to be at 20 days in that wait time or less. Continued growth with the disability waiver program, starting with the CAC, CADDY, and BI waiver services. We were an increase of 32% over the last 3 years again. We saw the same level of increase in our developmental disability service area of 32% over the last 3 years. What coincides with, go ahead.
CAC, CADDY, and BI. Can
Sure.
you spell
So
those out?
CAC, Community Alternative Care. So it's a medical disability waiver program for individuals that meet a hospital level of care. So individuals need the high level of nursing care. CADDY stands for Community Access for Disabled Individuals. So it could be any sort of disability for people that are between birth and 65, although if on before 65, they can remain on afterwards. And then BI waiver is the brain injury waiver, so just as it sounds, for individuals with brain injuries. All right. With the increase in volume, we also saw an increase in our aggregate budgets for the 2 disability waiver programs. So we have to manage an aggregate budget on the services that we're authorizing. In the CAC, CADDY, BI waiver area, we saw an increase of $7 million in 2022. And in the DD aggregate budget, we saw a $6 million increase in that aggregate budget. So total budgets combined is about $73 million for the services that we authorize through those waiver programs. Adult mental health, we also, waiting, was there a question somebody's going to ask? Sorry, I read body language and I thought somebody's going to ask me a question. My apologies.
Thanks.
Adult mental health, we saw another huge area of growth, both in numbers but also with complexity. So of the new voluntary cases that we opened in 2022, 44 were noted to have had psychiatric hospitalizations just prior to receiving those services. And then we saw an additional 54 requests for civil commitments in 2022, which was a 20% increase over the previous year. Additionally, we also noted that 15% of our open adult mental health cases are also open to probation, and 39% are under the age of 25. Staffing shortages in group homes with mental health providers exacerbated the drain on social workers, unable to secure supportive services in a timely manner to ensure safety and stability. This goes back to that workforce shortage that I've mentioned before. Despite caseload growth in the adult mental health area, we did see a decrease in revenue. This was due to, I think there was 4 medical leaves that occurred in 2022 in that service area. We were able to hire a couple of temp staff to come on, but we were still at a shortfall of almost 3,000 work hours in that unit due to leaves that had occurred. Another thing of note is that Historically, we've done what's called Rule 25 assessments. So those are substance use disorder assessments, determine level of care for treatment programs. We had been in a parallel process where people could access those services through the county or by going to community providers. As of July 1st, we're no longer doing those assessments, but we are determining the eligibility for the program itself. So people can come to us, determine that eligibility, financial eligibility, but then can in turn go to a community provider for the assessment and treatment services. Are there any questions of me?
Any questions? It's a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Hi again, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I know we've presented you with an incredible amount of data, so I will try and keep it brief. I'm Meg Caribou. I'm the manager for Child and Family Services. So I will touch briefly on child protection, which saw a decrease in assessments in 2022, and we held steady with the number of children in placements. However, placement costs increased by $150,000. And this was due to children needing to be in more secure settings and for longer periods of time. This year, so far, out-of-home placement costs have been demonstrating a slightly decreased trend. However, I know there's always a however, right? There's been a recent influx in placement needs from child welfare and children's mental health cases that will shortly overtake this decrease and likely lead to an increase in placement costs again this year. Additionally, Sherburne County did not hit our face-to-face performance measure of seeing 100% of kids within Minnesota statute timelines. We did come close at 94%, and just for a little context, that statutory requirement is 24 hours for many kids and 5 days for other kids, depending on what the allegation is, so a very high bar to hit. Social service intake, so our screening for all the social services, continues to reflect a high volume of calls. There are 5 workers there. 3 of them are social workers. They handle maltreatment calls and our mental health for adult mental health and children's mental health. The case aides handle all other calls and requests for services. In 2022, the calls for case aides nearly doubled. They went from 2,675 in 2021 to 4,003 in 2022, and each of those takes a significant amount of time, both in the call and the processing of the intake. Our housing area added a resource in 2021 and again in 2022. In 2022, a total of 224 individuals received housing support services from HHS. This is a huge area of need for our county and of growth, and we look forward to continuing to see this as it continues to grow. Children's mental health cases increased and falls in line with the theme of higher complexity and acuity. This is coupled with drastic decrease in community resources. Numerous agencies had wait lists for skills services, also known as CTSS, Children's Therapeutic Service Supports, or have completely discontinued this service. There are wait lists for day treatment. We only have 7 residential treatment facilities, and 3 of those are specific to specialized services across the state, and 3 that are higher level than residential. And those only boys, 1 is for specialized service, and 1 has a wait list of 2 years long. This is all to say out-of-home placement options are limited to non-existent. With youth cycling in and out of acute placements like hospitals and partial hospital placements and short-term stabilization programs such as Prairie Care, without enough long-term support in the community, either to support them at home or without a home placement when needed, it continues to be a challenge to help families support their children. Much work has been done in this area for family engagement and prevention to curb the rising costs of out-of-home placements. This includes the early intervention children's mental health position that I talked about earlier for post-permanency. We've done training out of ARPA dollars, that is a year-long training program for motivational interviewing influenced wraparound. And we have a pilot that we're sharing with Wright County to do an intensive in-home position with Greater Minnesota that allows for multiple times a week in-home services, and they also provide crisis support after hours for those families. Does anyone have any questions for me?
So Meg, some of these examples that we've seen in this last year of very difficult to place youth, like living in government centers for weeks at a time. I know Stearns County did that, had to do that, and a few other counties. So that's this last piece that you're talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And we've had youth, unfortunately, in hospitals where we've really struggled to get them to their next setting. We haven't yet had a youth here. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. We really work every possible angle. Our staff are incredibly skilled at safety planning and have great relationships with providers, but the providers and resources continue to become narrower and narrower.
It's a crisis across the state.
Yes, absolutely.
Any questions or comments of Meg or any other? Just overall, if you can speak to, and maybe this is Amanda, speak to your partnering with our other agencies in the government center, corrections, county attorney's office. So much of what you're speaking about for me, I hope we're not in silos with it, because it all is connected in different ways, our jail. So how are we making sure we're partnering as needed?
Yeah. Well, if you look at this little, our logo at the top, you'll notice that one of our 3 pillars is partner, because government can't do it alone. Government shouldn't be doing it alone. And so really partnership with community organizations, nonprofits, the faith community, and partnerships with our other departments within both in Sherburne County as well as our other counties. And so really I can't think of an initiative that we do that's not in partnership with one another. Commissioner Gray had an opportunity last week to come to our pre-placement screening. So every child that needs that out-of-home placement services, really coming together. Is this the last possible resort, and why? And we do that with community corrections. Nicole had mentioned our multidisciplinary team. I'm sorry, Meg had mentioned our multidisciplinary team. We're constantly, and then different acronyms and initiatives that have come before this board in terms of the mental health action team, our co-responder program. I mean, there's not anything that we do that we work just within, and even just within health and human services, talking so much about partnering across the aisle, because our clients have a worker. They don't just have a worker. They don't just live in financial assistance or social services. And oftentimes they have 5 or 6 workers. And so how do we coordinate even amongst our own agency to deliver? And that's really at the core of what integrated services is.
Great, thanks. Other comments? Commissioner Halls.
Madam Chair, on the percent of alleged victims seen face-to-face within the Minnesota statutes, you're at the threshold's 100%. We at 94.6%. How many cases does that represent?
What page number is that, Commissioner?
28.
28. Page 28.
There were 397 assessments in 2022.
Okay. So the 5.4% of the 397 is what didn't make it in the timeline?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
There used to be financial repercussions for folks that were outside of the 100% benchmark. We've been at 100% before those ended in 2019, so that's good that we aren't subject to those withholds anymore. But again, especially with the 24-hour response, it's usually an allegation of egregious harm or sexual abuse, and so we try to make those as soon as possible, but falling outside the 24 hours.
And just to clarify, attempts don't count. So if they attempted to see a child and were unable to find them, that does not count towards the 24 hours.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Well, I was going to wait until my correspondence, but yeah, I did get to speak or visit last week. Amanda hosted me at Health and Human Services, and in 3.5 months of being commissioners, this HHS department to me is just fascinating. And the scope and depth of the work they do and the passion and the challenges they have is just incredible. I don't think I'll ever be able to catch up with all of the acronyms. I hope there's never a test in regard to that, but what they do in their department, if you've never experienced it or gone seen it, I think it's vitally important as commissioners that you do, because I was just there for my first time last week. I will be back because it enlightens to me to see what they do and how important and how it affects lives in Sherburne County, and it's vital. I can't express that enough. It's just incredible to me, and I appreciate all the work that the Health and Human Services Department does, and the staff is fabulous. And what you do, Amanda, is great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
Well,
Gray.
I would be remiss if I didn't just take an opportunity to say thank you. HHS is complicated. It's dealing with people, and people don't just live in a world. And when people are coming to Health and Human Services, they're often in their most vulnerable state, and they're not coming on their best day. And so our work is difficult, and we have extraordinary staff. But really, we couldn't do the work we did without a supportive board. And I've been so blessed that we've had such a supportive board, and we continue to have a supportive board for Health and Human Services. And so I just really want to thank you on behalf of all of us.
And Madam Chair, I just want to concur with Greg's comments. He said it very well, and that's always been my feelings also. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that works so hard to serve the residents of Sherburne County that need it.
You meant Gary, right? Because Greg is like,
Gary.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Gary.
Close
Greg's
enough.
coming in now, so hold on.
Yeah.
2 Gs, close enough.
I know, right?
We are not entirely interchangeable.
My apologies. Gary.
And I think just any other comments before I, okay. Just thanks so much for the report. We're over time. I'm not following my own rules of leading a board, but this is so important and so much for us to hear. You know, I, as you all know, have a background in social work, so I understand some of the language. I understand some of it, and still, it's overwhelming. And what I hear from board members across the state, this is the area many commissioners have least experience in and hardest to understand. So just appreciate the work. It is people's lives. It's not widgets, and it's so important and vital. So thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'll work hard to get us back on track. Moving on to agenda item 5.5. Who's gonna tee this up? Great, Ms. Nicole Ruhoff, the opioid
Back again.
settlement agreements.
And I do have a PowerPoint for us, and we'll make sure I send that out. There we go. So I'm here today on behalf of our opioid committee. And so just going to give you some updates on what we've been up to in the last year or so. I'm going to start with some data. This data is pulled from the Minnesota Department of Health, and each county has a profile available to them that is on the website. So you can look not only at Sherburne County, but surrounding counties, as well as some state indicators. So the first slide here really just concentrates on the overdose deaths by year. Of course, we see some increasing rates for deaths in Sherburne County. This is really consistent with the state of Minnesota. Between 2020 and 2021, they saw a 43% increase in overdose deaths. And also noted some disparities. We don't have that at the county level, but American Indians as well as our Black Minnesotans had more deaths per population than our Caucasian folks. For Sherburne County's overdose death by year, certainly we see different substances that were contributing factors. There's some notes about other drugs that may also be involved because many times it's more than one drug that is involved in that overdose. For non-fatal overdoses, we've definitely seen that grow in Sherburne County. For those ER visits, that is very similar to the state of Minnesota. We also see trends in the same age group, those between 25 and 34, as well as males. And then if you look at by opioid use, we've certainly seen that increase over the years. Heroin has been very stable, but we continue to see stimulants and to a lesser extent, some cocaine. For prescriptions that have been dispensed, we've seen a nice decline in Sherburne County, so prescribers are being very thoughtful on the use of opioid prescriptions. And we've seen that throughout our state, so there's been a really good effort in the state of Minnesota to really monitor that program. While that's really great news, those are the prescribed opiates, we see an increase in the illicitly produced manufactured opioids throughout the state. So fentanyl use is on the rise. We see that in many forms in our communities and also laced with other drugs. We are a bit higher for the prescription rate by year than the state of Minnesota. I really don't have any information on why that is, but that will be something that we can certainly continue to look into to understand more about what consists that data. And then for healthcare visits for opioid dependence, Sherburne County has seen some increases in that above what we see in the state of Minnesota. So that is promising news that maybe folks are seeking treatment at a higher rate here. We had our most recent Minnesota student survey completed in the fall of 2022. And so noting we can watch those trends for opioid use in our youth. Disheartening a bit, the 8th and 9th grade students saw an increase in their use, but positively the 11th grade students a decrease. And I believe that's consistent throughout the state of Minnesota as well. The SUPS Coalition really dives deep into the Minnesota Student Survey, and I expect they'll continue to really look at that as we move forward.
Madam Chair, I had a quick question. On these numbers that you're showing, Nicole, is that a number like, can we say that they tracked it at grade 8 and when they got to grade 11, like when did these start to happen so we can know, does it drop off over time through that same testing group, or are these just plain straight numbers by themselves and there's no connection to?
I don't believe there's a connection just because the population has changed and students turn over and switch districts. Some opt out of the survey completely. It's just an optional tool for schools to utilize. I will say Sherburne County schools have been very good at participating, so that's really valuable for us to have that info.
Thank you.
And when you look at substance use disorder treatment, alcohol continues to be one in which we see many people seeking treatment, followed by methamphetamines, opioids, and then least crack and cocaine. There was some additional data on the state website that said 1 in 10 with substance use disorders receive treatment, so that's a very low proportion of those with a disorder that actually go to treatment. Opioid use disorder admissions did increase from 20 to 21, but less have completed treatment at the time of discharge, and their number was 7 out of 10, so don't actually complete their treatment.
Madam Chair, one other question on that slide. I'm just curious, we have alcohol, methamphetamine, opioids, crack and cocaine. Is there any testing for the vaping situation and what goes into a vape cartridge at times?
Not that I'm aware of. I would say that we've seen an increase in marijuana use in our vape devices, so we might see it in marijuana use numbers, but not, I don't think, explicitly for treatment.
Okay, thank you.
And then we've just compiled just some local data. So the first slides were really about what the state has tracked. Some of these are kind of our qualitative data, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, more of the human stories behind some of that. So community corrections certainly has a lot of intersection with opioid use in their clientele, and did note with deaths in the past year that 25% were related to overdoses. And the majority of those were with opioids. Many of those were seeking treatment at the time of death. Some were homeless at that time. median age about 33, Caucasian, male and female. So again, that looks kind of similar to what we saw in the statewide, but some nuances within our programs. Adult mental health also tracks by substance use disorders and has some percentage, 34% overall, with some type of substance use disorder in their caseloads. Our parent support outreach programs, so those that Meg mentioned that get screened out of child protection get offered this service, and many of those there have some drug-related allegations. It is a voluntary program, so some of those do take us up on case management and support, and some do not. Family home visiting, we do ask about substance use in the past. We certainly see a proportion of our folks who have had a history of substance use. Central Care Emergency Room just released this data to me. So those visits, 312 were for opioid overdose related. And so saw, again, more men than women, average age of 35, and mostly in our Caucasian folks, but certainly followed pretty heavily by our Black Americans and American Indians. And then some high-level child protection information, and Meg could certainly speak to this a bit more than I can. I do know that they said this was the primary reason for the substantiated abuse by year. So when you also factor in those that had kind of a secondary drug-related charge, those numbers would be much larger. Any questions with the data so far? And I'll just recap a little bit of the opioid settlement. So it was a large multi-district litigation with various pharmaceutical companies totaling $26 billion across the nation. Minnesota signed on with a memorandum of understanding in February of 2022, bringing $303 million to our state, and that's expected to be over an 18-year time span. 75% of those funds go to the local level, 25% stay at the state, and there is a very robust ORAC, Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council, made up of lots of different disciplines and sectors to help advise Minnesota on what that settlement fund use looks like in Minnesota. You can access more information on the Attorney General's website. The link is here. Sherburne County's first allocation is about $2.5 million, and so that looks like about $147,000 per year. Again, some of those funds have come in 2 or 3 years funds at a time. Some haven't been received. So as time goes on, we'll really have a better handle on what that looks like for funding coming in. And then recently you approved a resolution to sign on to another settlement. And so there is a proposed second allocation for Sherburne County, which is about $2.1 million. So another $100,000 per year over 18 years. The MOA really kind of outlines what the funds can be used for. They say opioid mitigation, prevention, treatment, harm reduction, recovery, research, and training. And local public health was named as the chief strategist. So my role today, helping to bring together the information, the data for our committee. So our approach here at Sherburne County has been that our committee formed in mid-2022, a cross-sector, cross-department group who had some stake and expertise in this area. We talked that our committee would certainly make recommendations to the board, and the board would approve what those recommendations will be. And then we also know that our Sherburne County Substance Use Prevention Coalition has been in existence for a very long time, is very well connected and represented. And so we want to certainly collaborate and leverage the work that they've been doing. Minnesota has also been very out in front by providing us a lot of tools. So AMC provided an opioid settlement toolkit that really provides a framework for Minnesota. So what's specific to Minnesota and how do we want to approach this work? In that framework, they have principles from Johns Hopkins that say when you are looking at spending this money, spend the money to save lives, use evidence to guide your spending, invest in youth prevention, focus on racial equity, and develop a fair and transparent process for deciding where to spend. And then another toolkit that was recommended was the Colorado Blueprint, and there were 3 main areas in that document. Collect some data, map out your strengths and your gaps in your resources, and then prioritize across the 4 domains: prevention, criminal justice, treatment and recovery, and harm reduction. And so we've moved forward with that type of structure. So a little more in depth about the Colorado Blueprint. Those are some of the main factors that they prompted us to really look at. What is available here in Sherburne County, what's available close proximity to us, and what's available kind of at the state level. So a quick kind of snapshot of Sherburne County, and I'll get a little bit more in depth on each one of these domains in the coming up slides. But we do have a lot of resources here in our community. So I think I heard earlier on in the board meeting, really leveraging what the community does and does well. So not to replicate, but really enhance and build upon things. For prevention, there is a robust prescription monitoring program. Both CentraCare and Fairview participate in that. They do recommend some screening tools. No agencies that I could identify in Sherburne County use this, but it certainly is something for us to look in the future, this SBIRT. There is a lot of provider education, and when I spoke with both of our main healthcare providers, they do a fair amount of education for providers annually. We have some community development with STIR and bounce back projects, so really looking at that primary prevention and making community connections. And then primary prevention for substance use prevention, both the Sherburne County SEPS and Big Lakes positive community norms certainly can impact that work. I think Amanda and Meg also mentioned early intervention, so family home visiting, parent support outreach, and our pointers and outreach social workers really get us on that front end of meeting families where they're at, in particular with substance use. We have lots of take-back and drug storage available throughout Sherburne County. Many of our schools have curriculums that they implement, and some districts actually employ prevention specialists. Social media, mostly through our SEPS Coalition. You'll see a lot of marketing and billboards through them. And really a lot of partners in the community do offer training. May not be explicitly for prevention focus, but our drug task force talks about what substances are they seeing and what are things that are trends that we should know. For the criminal justice sector, law enforcement has been, ahead of the curve in being able to provide Narcan for law enforcement and using that very successfully. I think there was a couple more updates that didn't make it a slide. They also do data collection, which is really helpful, so that as we are thinking about what gaps and strengths we have real-time data to use, and also the co-responder. So I don't have the most updated slide in here. And that's been a partnership with Central Minnesota Mental Health, Health and Human Services, and our Sheriff's Office. Community corrections, just kind of to highlight some of that data and where they are at again. And they do some urine testing that identifies fentanyl use and also other substances. So being at the forefront of being able to really intervene early and promote recovery. We don't have jail-based addiction treatment at this time, but I have heard that that may be an area that they are exploring, so that could be promising for those populations as well. And then I think you alluded to how do we partner across departments. Many of those post-incarceration social programs are a partnership throughout many of the sectors that we've talked about, between social services, public health, our education system, community partners, mental health agencies. There's really a lot of collaboration around that. Treatment and recovery, I don't think we will ever have enough in this area, but we do know that we do have quite a few providers. The wait lists may be longer than desired, but there are a variety of providers that are providing these services to our community. There's community recovery supports, CAMI, the Recovery Network. Not all of these are located within Sherburne County, but in close proximity. Broadband in serving underserved areas, so certainly the telehealth options have been expanded during COVID, and we expect that to continue as an option for our folks with substance use disorders. And so that's really exciting to see that Sherburne County has been making a big effort on that. There's a lot of places that do research and evaluation, so the Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Safety, and other state and private agencies are collecting information about best practice and promising practices. And then we've also seen primary care providers expand their ability to also treat and prescribe Suboxone and those types of medications. In the past, there's been some hesitancy for them to do that, as it really was thought a specialty area, but we have seen growth in that in our local providers. Harm reduction for Sherburne County. So there's certainly a lot of surveillance about overdoses, both locally and at the state level. We do see that with intravenous drug use, we can see increased cases of HIV and hepatitis. We certainly can treat those in our healthcare systems, but those specifically for HIV and hepatitis may have more specialty clinics in the metro area. There is a wide variety of providers that do provide Narcan, and now with the recent information about that being available over the counter, we'll see maybe how that can also impact the accessibility for that. But many of our pharmacies have participated for a long time in being able to distribute Narcan, but I didn't have any solid numbers on who takes advantage of that and what that looks like. I believe there are barriers because there's typically a copay or a cost, and so with it being over the counter, we expect those barriers to be less. Drug checking, so there are fentanyl test strips, and a few of our partners do provide those, especially in our shelters and some of our coordinated care clinics. So a person who has a substance can check it to see if it has a presence of fentanyl in it before they use, so that they are aware of what they're taking. As mentioned earlier, sometimes a product is laced with fentanyl and the user may not know. We do have some syringe exchange programs. Again, pharmacies are available to do that, and then there is an organization in St. Cloud that provides clean needles. We have family supports, and we also have the Metro Region EMS system that also can provide Narcan and education and training. Any questions about some of our mapping and scanning of resources here in Sherburne County?
I did have one comment, Madam Chair. I think, really got some great things involved since we've been aware of what we're going to be getting. And I'm happy to see, too, that one of the networks that you've are going to work with as well is the Recovery Community Network, because it not only serves people that are recovering, it also serves veterans in recovery in central Minnesota. And I think that is a key, because I think veterans respond better to other veterans. So I think that's very helpful. So I'm happy that you were able to make that connection.
And I will say the City of St. Cloud has also been discussing their award and does plan to reallocate that out to the 3 counties. That hasn't happened yet, but certainly when we talk about the St. Cloud funds, we've talked about what specifically does the City of St. Cloud want to see with that funds, and being very collaborative with the 3-county approach. And recovery is certainly an area that has been brought to light in many facets.
Yes, especially when it serves the central Minnesota. Yeah, so thank you for all your hard work on pulling all these partnerships together.
It's really been a collaborative effort, so just kind of back on the paper here. Milestones to date, there's been a few resolutions, so I can't speak to those as much as Bruce can, but if there's any questions about those. Our committee has met 3 times, but a lot of work has gone on in between those meetings, and email communication, and then we've also had a lot of meetings with partners in the community, so the Sheriff's Group, Centricare, Fairview, our partners within HHS, the Coalition, cities, townships. I attend a statewide local public health association meeting every month. There's one this afternoon, and it's really been a great space to kind of exchange best practices and what's going on in most counties. All right, on to the funding recommendations, which is in the resolution for today. So there are 5 recommendations. The first is to purchase and allocate to law enforcement and public safety agencies Narcan to administer as the first responders to opioid overdoses. And the exhibits there, so as part of the MOA, there was an Exhibit A that really kind of talked about a very broad list of activities that we may want to engage in. So that is referencing where you see that in Exhibit A. And you see an allocation amount for that one. The other ones do not have an allocation amount as of yet, and I think there'll be some additional conversation about that. The second one is to support a position in support of the Substance Use Prevention Coalition. We know that the funding, grant funding for the coalition is coming to an end and really want to sustain that effort. So not to supplant and do anything now, but as that grant comes to an end, really prepare for the longevity of that coalition work. The third one is to support a position within Health and Human Services as the early intervention social worker. And that's been a position that's already been in existence, who's been funded by opioid funds from a different source. And so making sure that we can continue to provide that resource within Health and Human Services. And fourth, to continue to support the position of the co-responder embedded with law enforcement. And again, that is a grant-funded position currently, but as those funds come to an end or maybe decreased, we have a plan for being able to sustain that model and potentially expand. And then fifth, there's certainly some administrative costs to facilitating these funds, and so we would like to provide some funding for the administrative fees. And then again, just maximizing our funding by partnering with neighboring counties, cities, and coalitions. So I think we heard Commissioner Phoebe talk about that. It doesn't stop at a border or of a city and or a county, so really being deliberate about our interventions and where we can collaborate.
Okay, does that conclude?
Questions, additions from the committee?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, just real briefly, I want to introduce or make sure you're aware of the committee members. So County Attorney Kathy Haney, Corey Mabus from Community Corrections, Amanda's back in the corner there, Diane is here, Joel is not here, and then Dan is here, as well as Nicole. So the way we've structured this administratively is Nicole is basically the project manager, and then Diane is the official project administrator, since we have to manage these funds coming in, keep them going. And what we're intended to do is, following today, is this committee will work and populate for the 2024 budget. So as opposed to coming back with the resolutions every time we add or change a program, we'll plan to do it through the budgetary process starting in 2024. And again, if you have any questions, we're all here so we can answer those particular questions.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thanks for that report. Very comprehensive, very detailed. Thank you for the updates. Seeing none, we do have a resolution in front of us, and I would be open to a motion to approve the resolution 040423-AD-3086, establishing 2023 programs and activities undertaken pursuant to county participation in state and national opioid settlement agreements, and directing that future programming and activities be included in the county's budgeting process.
Madam Chair, I'll move that.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Danielowski. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Felber. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hulse.
In discussions, I need some clarification on what we're committing to from a funding perspective. I thought it was my understanding that the resolution was calling for the funding to come from the grants. However, that's not clear to me in the resolution.
Okay.
So that's my concern.
Okay, and which part of the resolution makes that muddy for you?
It doesn't specify. I'm looking at the specific items 1 through 5. It doesn't specify to me that this is coming from grant funding for these positions. I know these positions are existing positions, and they're currently being paid for with grant funding. It was my understanding with the future grant that's coming through, that was the intent for that to those monies to be used to continue this. It's just not clear to me in the wording. So that's my only my only concern.
Just making sure that we're clear on that, that it is all through the
Correct, yeah, and the,
years.
on the second page of the resolution, what we put in there, and if it's not clear, we can amend it on the floor. Now therefore be it further resolved that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners hereby determines the following priorities with respect to approved uses of the opioid settlement monies. So that was our clarity, to make sure it's specific only to that. There's no use of levy dollars or anything else in here. And then again, as you heard, this is only for the remainder of '23. The rest will be in the budget, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
And we will, Chair, we will update that one slide that was missing, the co-responder model, and the other bullet, and then that'll be the updated deck you'll get as well. And I apologize for not having it ahead of time for you.
So the slides will be sent to us with those updates. Thanks, Nicole. Agenda item number 5.6, consider and approve the American Rescue Plan Act update.
Good morning again. This week we have two expenses under the $50,000 threshold. The first is for a new economic development business retention and expansion software. This will track our visits to local businesses where we will find out what keeps them here, why did they come here, what can we do to help, and this will also be able to be used by our cities as well. So it is a very centralized software that allows us to partner with our community. There is a one-time cost of the $10,000 to implement the software, and then there's a $2,000 annual fee, but that is already included in the budget as part of our professional services, so there'd be no additional budget cost on that one. The second expense is for pandemic-related staffing reimbursement. So my time and some of maintenance's time is reimbursed through the ARPA dollars. That's not an extra expense. It's put right into our general levy to offset some of our costs and lost time due to the ARPA funds. So I'd be looking for a motion for those two expenses under the $50,000 threshold.
Okay, and we can take these together, so what is the wish of the board?
So moved.
Motion is made by Commissioner Gray,
I'll second, Madam Chair.
seconded by Commissioner Danielowski. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, one quick question. So I sit on the EDA, and I'm in favor of the software. I know we looked into whether there was some capability for pipeline management, for opportunity management within the software. Was that, I don't remember, was that an added expense if we chose to implement that, or is that included in the price?
It'd be included in the price. We'd work with them to customize a little bit of that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
If it is an extra cost at any time, I would come back and ask.
Okay,
Yep.
sounds good.
Okay, great. Looks like that's it, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. And the next expense?
The next expense is a one-time expense for Island View Park, and I'll turn it over to Gina to talk a little more in detail about that project.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thanks for your time this morning. So this request is for a road improvement project at Island View Park. This park is the park on the Mississippi River between Clear Lake and St. Cloud. And the road portion that this project addresses is used to get to the paddlecraft access within the park on the Mississippi River. So very popular in the summer. And I just want to explain the graphics on the slide a little bit. It's kind of packed, but Dan told me I had to be quick, so I put it all in one slide for you. So in the upper right, you can see the contour lines from Beacon, and the project section is between the two red lines. Within that red line, there is approximately 33 feet of elevation change from the top of the hill on the east to the bottom of the hill on the west. The photo is at the bottom of the hill looking up around the curve, and it's deceiving, but it is a 10% grade. So the road in its current state is very narrow, and it is full of safety concerns with limited visibility. The steep grade and the extreme side slopes invite frequent gully formation, and with the gully formation, there's even fewer options of places to go to avoid pedestrians and oncoming vehicles. You can see it's a 14-foot wide road. So gullies forming on the left as you're looking up the slope narrow that drivable surface quite a bit. And the limited visibility. So the project would widen the travel lanes and then install water drainage features on the road to prevent gully formation, reducing ongoing maintenance costs for materials, equipment, and staff, and making the park safer and more accessible. So we're asking you to consider today approving $125,000 for this project, and it could be designed in-house and constructed in 2024.
And just a reminder for the board, outdoor park, use of ARPA funds for outdoor parks and recreation is an authorized expense.
So this is a one-time ARPA expense of $125,000 park improvement. What is the wish of the board?
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve that.
Commissioner Falber moves approval. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Gray. Questions and comments?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
just a quick
Pauls.
question. How much you're gonna widen the road by?
Well, that'll come out in the design process once the engineers go out and we get a survey done.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have it too.
And I'm assuming it's gonna remain a gravel road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
If any of you have traveled this road, it's much needed. Yes.
I haven't, but I'm going to.
We'll, when we do our road tour later this spring, if Andrew hasn't caught you individually, we typically would do a road tour. We're probably going to do it in two parts this year. We'll do a western county and eastern county, but when we do that, we'll add this. Probably won't, unless it's not improved yet, we won't go down, but we'll at least get you close and we can walk down that.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thanks,
Thank you,
Gina.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, this is where we can make up some time, folks. So it's all on you. No. During our commissioner correspondence, please share with us what the board needs to hear or what you need from the board from your visits over the last couple weeks. Who would like to start?
I'll go.
Gary.
We all did the SCAP meeting on April 5th. April 6th, I was supposed to attend a SHAC meeting, but my IT skills are very limited, so I was not able to log on. Nicole's going to get me the recorded version, so I'm able to do that. The committee met with the Farm Family of the Year. We have came down to a winner of the Farm Family of the Year for Sherburne County. I'll leave that for a later date to be announced. Had the GSDC meeting in St. Cloud. After I found it, the meeting had changed. Dan and Greg knew, but I didn't, so I was a couple minutes late coming in, but I missed that email supposedly, but I knew the meeting was there. Blue Hill Township, met with them, working through some things with their IT. Met with the staff to discuss the Ditch 1 meeting, Joint Powers meeting on April 18th, which is tonight I'll be attending. Technology Steering Committee, again, I was completely lost at that meeting, but it was good to sit in on it. Energy Transition meeting I thought was great. Bruce did a nice job of facilitating that and getting us going on in that portion. The MICA meeting by Zoom, Lisa and I were on. XL Energy Open House, the new transmission line, just going to be adding an additional circuit to the current line that's there. The SWCD board meeting. The highlight of my week was that April 13th meeting with HHS, which was, I already spoke on, was fabulous. I'll do that again. And then last night I attended a record-setting Becker Township meeting, which they got in and out in 20 minutes. So it was great there. I got it done in under a minute and a half. The rest of you are under that.
Okay, you did. Greg?
Okay.
You beat it.
Well, participated in the, obviously, the SCAT meeting also. I did drop by the Livonia Township meeting, Orrock Township meeting, and a fire board meeting for Zimmerman Livonia Fire. Nothing really major there. Sat through the NACO Public Safety and Policy Steering Committee monthly call. They talked a lot about the Department of Homeland Security's Blue program, which is targeted human trafficking. They talked about a couple pieces of legislation that really deal with getting Medicare still applied to people who are incarcerated but not yet convicted, and also for people reentering the community. Those things have been working on for a while, so those are still moving through the federal legislation. Sat in on a Council for Foreign Relations Electric Vehicle Infrastructure webinar. I'll be super brief about that. Basically, they're going to put like $5 billion into changing all of our school buses to electric buses over the years. It's over the next 5 years. It seems like that's a good idea, but it's going to cost over $200 million to switch our school buses to that. So this movement to switch our school buses to all electric is definitely going to cost the counties money in the long run. Stop by the Greater St. Cloud Development Corp spring meeting. The big thing they were talking about there is cooperation between different development agencies in the state or different companies. There were people there from Apex, which is up in Duluth, Greater Mankato, Greater Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then another one out of Rochester area. So that was a good thing. They're just basically talking about how the various development people need to work together to make sure that we get the proper companies in the proper communities. Energy transmission meeting, we talked about, we're going to discuss all types of energy. We're going to try to invite representatives from industry to participate so we can get more direct information. The MESB executive meeting, Minnesota Emergency Services Board, trying to get some clearance for Hennepin County and Ramsey County to run non 800 megahertz radio channels for some special events. Trying to get more funding for 911 systems in the state. And a big problem and that an area that needs to be taken care of is bidirectional amplifiers, distributed antenna systems, which are systems that go in buildings to help in you get better emergency radio communications in those buildings and also to improve cell service in those buildings. We need more of them and more funding for them, but we also need to create a registry so we know where they are because they can cause interference to the statewide 800 megahertz armor system. One of their long-term employees, Martha Zeiss, retired, and the various legislative updates, there's like 6 omnibus bills on the floor between the two houses. And there's a lot of bills out there that could be good for the counties, but a lot of things haven't been finalized yet. So hopefully that was quick enough.
That was amazing. I'll go quick. I was at the Sherburne County Area Township meetings with all of you. I thought it was a good meeting. Met with Anoka County, a few county commissioners and some of their leadership about joint transportation projects. That discussion will be ongoing. Senator Klobuchar and Smith came to the St. Cloud Airport to celebrate the $500,000 appropriation to increase and improve their tower, their safety tower.
Right.
What's the word I'm thinking of? Federal Aviation.
The control tower.
Control tower.
Control
Thank
tower.
you. Can't find my words. Participated in a federal legislative briefing, found out that we have been included in Congressman Emmers as well as both senators, Tina Smith and Klobuchar, for another $7 million appropriation for 169 and 4. Participated or went to the Elk River. Elk River helped host a chamber meeting with Zimmerman, which is trying to get their chamber up and running. It was incredibly well done and well attended by about 40 Zimmerman business people and community members, and the discussion was Randy Pasecki, administrator from City of Zimmerman, gave the overview of 169 and 4, did a fabulous job. Attended the MICA meeting, which you all get the updates legislative of what's going on at the Capitol, which is changing daily right now. Participated in a NACO health policy call, and just want to give a shout out that tomorrow is National Health Day of some sort that I learned, County Health Day through NACO. Was part of an AMC Futures planning meeting. Central Minnesota Jobs and Training in Monticello attended their community and government relations meeting. We're planning our next year of events, and also the Workforce Development Board meeting. And then yesterday was at the Capitol along with Bruce and David Rodell for a number of hours to testify on the 169-4 overpass. So that's it for me.
All right. I attended an option site visit with Senator Matthews and did the same SCAT Township Association meeting that everybody else attended. Also attended my Central Minnesota Area Transportation meeting up in Baxter, and I'm happy to announce that they approved the awarding of, for us at least, in my community, the pedestrian and school safety pedestrian bridge crossing the Elk River on County Road 5. It's the gap that needs to be filled in for the trail, so we're not sending pedestrians and bikers up on the road deck. So we're excited about that. That was a $648,800 award, so more to come on that one. And then stopped by the township board meeting. Just wanted to let them be aware that this was an award that was presented, so they know they've been in support of it as well. Also attended the St. Cloud Airport event that Commissioner Phobie referred to, accepting that award for the control tower, one of the most important pieces at the airport that helps land those planes safely. So looking forward to that update. Had the NACO Leadership Academy kickoff, met with the Solid Waste Advisory meeting, and we approved 2 awards for the Wick Garden expansion project and the 4-H Sherburne County Fair Organics project for the Sherburne County Fair. And also had some metric discussions in how to better improve our outreach, and also talked about doing a basically a strategic plan initiative as to how we're going to manage our solid waste in regards to our landfill facilities. Also attended the XL Big Oaks transmission line meeting and had my APO meeting up in St. Cloud. That does it for me. How'd I do?
Okay, so I also attended the Association of Townships and attended the joint meeting with Anoka County on the transportation projects. Out of that, I did meet with Councilperson Wagner from Elk River as well to start to discuss that. Sat in on the Technology Steering Committee meeting with Gary, as well as the Energy Committee meeting. I attended, there's a community action meeting around presentation on election integrity. That was attended, there was a lot of interest from the community. It was also attended by several of the state legislatures and a couple of the senators. It was an interesting presentation. Attended the Elk River City Council meeting where they had a couple of new officers sworn in, which was nice to see. Also met with Representative Novotny and a couple others, and just a comment on that. I think one of the things we've been talking about, and this also relates to, I also met with the Elk River City Council on, they just had their Truth in Taxation meeting, and there is a lot of energy around property taxes. I think the message that has been sent from the county a couple of times, which is, unfunded mandates are a problem, and we agree that it's a problem, is getting to the representatives. What I would say with that is I just want to reemphasize that it's a joint issue. We also have to be very judicious in our budgets. It's not just the unfunded mandates, although that is a problem. But I also think it's a real reality that our delegation, Senators Matthews and Lucero and Representatives Novotny and Meckland, aren't the ones that are necessarily writing the unfunded mandates. And so while it's helpful for them to control it, I think when we suggest to the constituents to talk to them about that, we preface it by saying, we realize that you're not the ones that are writing these unfunded mandates, so how can we help you with this? Rather than, I think we've given the impression, so folks have been kind of attacking them. As we know, as Bruce and I have talked about, there's a couple of bills that we're interested in sponsoring. It would be helpful to not alienate our local delegation if we were going to want their cooperation. So I would suggest we reposition how we talk about that a little bit. And lastly, I just want to put out to the community to remember there's been a lot of energy around potholes because how brutal this winter was. There is a place on the website to report potholes on county roads. I don't remember the exact website, but it's on the engineering page. There's a place to report a problem around traffic, and so that's a good place to report that.
And some of the worst are right when you're going into St. Cloud. But anyway, on 10. Oh my gosh, I lost a car in there.
If you just type in citizen services, and there's a pothole. So there's a whole section called citizen services on the main page.
Few other things that I forgot, just I want to have collectively us do a shout out to Emma Bates from Elk River, who won the Boston Marathon. So a local person that in her category or for women, so that's very exciting. And then it has been asked of me a few times by board members that this is something we had talked about in January, starting a once-a-month lunch as a board. So Bruce and I have talked about this a bit, and we're recommending that start in May, be the first meeting of the month. I think that would be the next one. The first meeting of the month in May. Obviously, no business would be conducted, but these will need to be posted. And I am recommending that we rotate it through commissioner districts. And so I'm charging Commissioner Halls with hosting the first one in Elk River somewhere. And so we're asking that you get those details to Bruce at least a week to 10 days before with the place and the time and the details. So that's that. Okay, anything else? I am going to recommend that we move into Mike's ditch report. So I'm going to open our ditch authority meeting and invite Mr. Mike Lindenau to give us his ditch report, and then we will take a break after that. So a break is coming, just so you know.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. Excuse me.
So I think we first need to approve the ditch authority agenda, so I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. So,
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. With the weather the way it's been this spring, we haven't been able to start our projects that we had proposed. So I'm guessing by a couple, 3 weeks, we'll be able to get in there and get some work done. It's just conditions aren't favorable right now. So I thought I'd talk about, I went out and shot some video and took some pictures of all the flooding that's going on around the county with the ditches. Yeah, straight to the top one. Then maximize it. This is on County Road 1. That's Pearl Sod Farm. It's completely flooded. Water's over the banks and spread out all over their fields. So I don't think they're going to be harvesting any sod for a while. That's how full it is. That ripple in the water, you could play it again, Keisha. That ripple in the water there is a crossing. So it's water is completely over the crossing. You could go to the next one. This is on the east side of the road. This is right between Elk River and Zimmerman. Actually, this one is on County Road 32, just west of County Road 1. So it's completely, I've never seen it this high. It's completely over the banks into the fields. They have a pickup and a shed that's probably 1.5 feet underwater. You can see the shed and the pickup. And there's the culvert, which is probably about 2 to 3 feet under the top of the water. You can go to the next one. That's in front of the culvert. It's like a cesspool, whirlpool. This is the other side of the road, on the south side of the road. This is County Road 32 again, probably about half mile west of County Road 1. All that wood there got picked up by the water on the north side of the road. It's firewood.
So Mike, do you get the sense that the water has crested? Are we at our highest, do you think?
Probably today I'm gonna go out and check.
Okay. Wow.
We have been checking a couple bridges for scour, and the bridge on County Road 11 south of 73 is, it's going down.
Okay.
They receded since Saturday. This is County Road 61, just west of County Road 20, north of 16. We had to close the road for 3 days, just for the safety of the traveling public. Somebody comes flying in there, it'd be, could put them in a skid.
Mike, could you identify what area of the county for those that are watching that maybe don't know where that county road is?
County Road 61? It would be, what township is that?
Haven.
Palmer?
Haven.
Haven Township. So it's north of County Road 16, off of County Road 20, west of County Road 20.
I've been on it many times, but some people don't know
Oh, sure.
the names of those
Sure.
county roads are.
This is on County Road 72 in Elk River, right on the Big Lake Elk River Township line. This is County Ditch 28. As you can see where the post is, that's where the apron is, but the ditch is gone, disappeared. And this is another one where I've never seen this bad. This is the same road, County Road 72. This is just upstream. The road ditch is the county ditch, as you can see, just over the top. This is the east side of County Road 72. There's a centerline culvert that drains into the county ditch from the east side of the road. And it's pushed the water all the way over to the east side of the road too, like an equalizer. I think that's all I have. I'm sure many of you have seen a lot of areas around the county driving around where there's just water everywhere. That's what happens when you lose all that snow in like 3 days. That 80-degree weather, just,
And then you get a bunch more.
yeah, and then you get rain and snow. So whatever we gained, we lost. So hopefully things turn around here.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Anything else on your report that you want to highlight?
Not really.
Okay, so then we'd be open to a motion to approve and accept the ditch drainage technician's report.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Halls. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Danielowski. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. And now on to agenda item number 7.3, consider approval of a county ditch crossing agreement for Luke Corrigan. Diane, are you going to do this or Mike?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good morning again. Before you is a request for a private crossing for an individual on Luke Corrigan on ditch 14. We have drafted up, there is a map in there showing where his property is for location, and in order for him to be able to build and access his property, he will need a private crossing to access that. So that's what this is for, this agreement. The agreement has been reviewed and drafted by our county attorney's office, and any maintenance repair on there that the property owner would be responsible for. So we're looking for approval to permit a private crossing on County Ditch 14, excuse me.
Okay, so this is an action item, so we would need a motion to do that.
So moved.
Motion's made by Commissioner Gray,
Madam Chair,
seconded by Commissioner Felber. Any questions or comments?
and I'm assuming this will be recorded, so any future property owners would know that that's an easement area?
Yep,
Perfect, thank you.
you're welcome.
Others? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thank you. I will adjourn now the Ditch Authority meeting, and we will take a break. It is now 11:30. Let's come back at 11:40 and start our workshops. So we'll recess for 10.